What happens when black folks don't get along? All right, so everybody take a deep breath and slowly release. What happens when black folks don't get along, not because we don't care for one another, but because the world as we know it does not want us to. Even before Africans were taken from the continent, forced into chains, and scattered across the globe, systems of oppression were designed to break Black unity, to teach us to mistrust, to make us compete for power, for credibility, for survival. These patterns still haunt our memories, linger in our bodies, and at times even find their way into our theology. But let me pause and say something sacred to you specifically. I see something special in this community. Over recent years, I have witnessed a hunger not just to tolerate Blackness, but to celebrate it, learn from it, and honor it outright. The fact that I'm here preaching from a Black perspective in a Black body to a multicultural Zoom is itself testimony that you are choosing to move forward toward truth and not away from it. So today, we go deeper, not because we're in a crisis, but because the Holy Spirit is always inviting us into deeper liberation, deeper love, deeper unity, not a shallow unity that skips the hard stuff, but a unity that confronts it with holy courage. And although this community attracts many cultural and racial backgrounds, Black, white, Latina, Asian, Indigenous, multiracial, today's word starts from a specific place, the Black experience. Because the truth is, Black people haven't only been oppressed, we've also been divided. And that division is not just interpersonal, it is political, psychological, and spiritual. And today you will hear me say Black and not African American, and that's intentional. Because African American points to a US based identity rooted in American slavery and the civil rights struggle. But Black is bigger than that. It speaks to a global identity, a diasporic one. It includes our kin in the Caribbean, in South America, Central America, Europe, Canada, Africa, Asia, and beyond. We are a diaspora people shaped by colonialism, migration, survival, resistance. And when I preach about Blackness, I'm preaching about a spiritual, cultural, and political identity that is borderless. To say Black is to stand in solidarity with all those cast as other, who have survived the wounds of anti-Blackness, but never let those wounds define their destiny. I need to point out that even Black people in my circles, however, mostly don't consciously embrace Pan-Africanism. Let's be honest, when Black folks don't get along, it's not always about ego. It's usually the residue of powerful systems, white supremacy, internalized oppression, global anti-Blackness, the scarcity mindset, the white gaze. These forces move like shadows, unseen, denied, but always present. But Jesus didn't call us to devour each other. Jesus calls us to liberty, to truth, to communion. And that liberation always begins with telling the truth about our pain, our power, our purpose, telling the truth. So allow me to state 5 truths. Truth number 1, scarcity was manufactured to divide us. We were taught to fight over crumbs. From slavery's fields to school hallways, from neighborhood blocks to nonprofit boards, we were conditioned to believe there's only room for one black leader, one black voice, one black job, one seat at the table. Dr. Joy DeGruy calls this post-traumatic slave syndrome. Trauma etched in our DNA, teaching survival through competition instead of connection. However, she refers explicitly to African Americans. Yet this brutality, killing, torture, rape, ethnic cleansing has been inflicted on Black people in both hemispheres. We may be incredulous, shocked when we look at Israel, but the logic of cruelty and domination is global and historic. Here's the truth. Scarcity is a lie of empire. God's table is built on abundance. There is enough for every dream, every voice, every generation. We are not competitors. We are kinfolk. Truth number 2. The white gaze distorts how we see each other. John 12, verse 43 says, "They loved human approval more than the approval of God." That is like the white gaze, the pressure to perform for whiteness, to be exceptional just to be accepted. When we internalize that, we turn it on each other, judging how black someone is, policing our joy, criticizing our creativity, shrinking our truth. But Toni Morrison said that she refused to write for the white gaze, and we must refuse to live for it. Truth number 3, anti-blackness is global, even among the oppressed. Anti-blackness is not just American. From the Dominican Republic to Brazil, from India to Palestine. Yes, even in Palestine, where black people have long shown solidarity, black Palestinians still face exclusion and colorism. Frantz Fanon said, "The colonized man is an envious man because the colonizer taught him to hate himself." Even among oppressed people, anti-blackness can take root. That's why solidarity must be mutual, honest, and accountable. Truth number 4, why some of us as black folks are liberal and some conservative. Black folks are not a monolith. Some are liberal, some conservative, some in between. Why? Most lean liberal because liberal policies supported civil rights, public education, healthcare, because liberation theology teaches us to care for the least of these. But a few lean conservative because respectability once felt like survival and because they feel unseen. Some black families are acting like conservatives when they aren't. For instance, welcoming Trump's military takeover in Chicago. And it's hard to argue with their rationale. They're not really conservative, but they have limited imaginations and they feel like systems are supposed to work for them and they just want to survive. But let's be honest, survival is not always sacred. Some of our ancestors betrayed Denmark Vesey and Nat Turner, not from hatred of freedom, but from fear of what freedom might cost. That same logic appears today sometimes in black conservatism as they align with empire, downplay racism, and reject protest. We don't demonize our people, even the ones who are shucking and jiving for racist white attention and perhaps for white dollars, but we do need to identify their internalized anti-blackness. We have to ask about black conservatism. Is it colonizer religion or Christ-centered? Does the conservatism we've inherited reflect the God of our ancestors or the God of the colonizer? Slavery and colonization used Christianity to make us obedient and docile. It taught us that heaven mattered more than justice, that silence was holy, that freedom was disrespect. James Cone said, any theology that is indifferent to the theme of liberation is not Christian theology. Jesus healed on the Sabbath, broke the rules, disrupted the economy, got killed for challenging empire. And if your theology doesn't set captives free, that's not Jesus. And I need to insert here that anti-queerness is a colonial inheritance. Anti-queerness in the Black community is not our tradition. It's a colonizer inheritance. Just last week, the African country of Burkina Faso criminalized homosexuality, joining a long list of African nations enforcing European-era laws. Colonizers didn't just take our land, they imposed white, heteropatriarchal sexual norms and called them Christian. Before colonization, some African cultures recognized more than two genders, like many indigenous people in North America who have rejected Christianity and call their LGBTQIA plus people two-spirited. Some African cultures honored same-gender relationships. It was the colonizer, the missionary, and the judge who made it illegal. In some cases, driven by vocal, closeted queer folks who can't closet their Blackness. And we are still living under those theologies. 1 John 4, verse 20 says, if we love God but hate our siblings, we are liars. And beloved, queer Black folks are not broken. They are not outsiders. They are not new. And we need to welcome them in the way that indigenous people have historically, that is, as leaders, as rare and special voices of wisdom. They are family. And they belong. And I need to, before I stop, and I do have truth number 5 coming up, but I need to call out the harm within our community. Understanding systems does not mean excusing abuse. Explaining trauma does not mean avoiding accountability, because some Black folks in pulpits, in politics, and power have done harm. Silencing survivors, misusing funds, preaching empire under the guise of Black liberation. But as we read earlier, Micah 6:8 says, what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly? Real love holds us accountable. Liberation requires integrity. So here's truth number 5. Beyond saving the system, we need to build something new. We've marched, we've voted, we've protested, but maybe we're not here to save the system. Angela Davis reminds us freedom is a constant struggle. Jesus said, my realm is not of this world. We're not called to reform empire. We're called to resist it and build something new. John 17:21, Jesus prays that they all may be one. Unity is not sameness. Unity is not silence. Unity is covenant. Covenant to love, to tell the truth, to stay in the struggle even when it gets hard. So here's my closing word. First, for my Black siblings, not just here, but those who will listen to the recording. Thank you for your care. Thank you for caring for the global majority. You are my kin. We can greet each other in public. You are not alone. You are beloved. You are here because of resilience. It's in your DNA, and we are healing right now. We are a world rising. Of the 195 countries in the world, more than 1/3 are Black. 16 in the Caribbean and 54 on the continent. And remember, not only do we need to stand with each other in our resilience, but the Black radical tradition stands with all oppressed peoples, including those in Gaza and all indigenous populations. At the same time, we still call out how Black suffering is often ignored or erased when it's politically or socially inconvenient. And to my siblings who are not Black, thank you for your care for the global majority. And thank you for helping us build beloved community. Your presence is welcome and needed. But your participation is essential in truth, justice, and dismantling of anti Blackness. Now, just consider this: white feminism is superfluous when everyone stands with Black people, especially Black women. Other people of color are uplifted when they pay the price of solidarity with Black people. But I need to emphasize this: standing with Black people will cost you. It's a price not even all Black people are willing to pay. But we are not going to transform our planet without this payment, and it's overdue. So take a closer look at your favorite liberal political analyst or commentator and ask yourself, does this truly look like the revolution? Let's pray. God of my mother and father, we thank you. We thank you for gathering us across screens and distances, a people diverse in culture, language, history, yet bound together by your spirit. We see how we are not here to fix what was never built for us. We are here to remember who we are, to repair what was broken, to live free. Ashe, amen. Let it be so.
That was a word. I felt like point by point, I felt like it was pretty much very similar in the brown Latino community. The same issues around respectability, politics, and how that divides us. Um, and the lie of scarcity. Um, And I think just with this whole attack on critical race theory, I feel like it goes even beyond an attack on critical race theory. It's an attack on critical thinking. Because, like with my cousins, who kind of lean toward the right, when I kind of poke at certain things, it's very surface level. And once you poke at it, they can see that, oh, okay. So I've been hoodwinked, I've been brainwashed this whole time, and I just wasn't thinking about these things. Um, so I don't know. Shella, do you have any thoughts that you want to share?
Wow, that was such a good message, like you said, kind of point by point things that I know I have lived. And I was trying to think of an example of division within, just our own little community. And I just think of how much when I was growing up, how much it was appreciated for your skin to be lighter. And why? Why did we not just see the beauty of the person and not that? And how and and how just the miseducation. We've been so miseducated. The systems have taken us to places where we don't even understand how to love each other properly. And yet, and yet we are resilient. And one of the things of resiliency that I remember really deeply is I would never, ever, when I was coming up, ever walk past a person who was Black and not say hi. Everywhere, always, just to let them know we're here. Because we know that when we're out in the world, there's ways we have to live. There's ways we live when we're at home, and then there's ways we had to live when we're trying to get a job or when you're trying to do things. There was all of those things. And I'm sure other Black people have seen that. I am so grateful for, I am so grateful for uh, my brothers and sisters on here who are making the choice to actually stand up. It's not easy. I think you said it's not, it's very difficult for for even Black people sometimes to stand up for yourself when you're around situations. But I know for my white brothers and sisters to actually stand up and say, no, this is not okay, um, and and fight it. Uh, I'm sorry. I don't know. There's just so much that you're saying, and I know a lot of it has to do with just miseducation and how we have been trained to fight each other for scraps when we actually have so much. We are so rich. We can give away so much, and we're fighting each other to have a better car, a better house, or a better than someone else. So I don't know what to say. I just want to open it up because I'm sure there's a lot of comments out there about what Pastor Moore said. What you said is so rich, and it takes a while to process it all. So let's
Yeah,
open.
Shella, you just reminded me to point out that any of us who were educated in the US, there's a very strong likelihood that we had textbooks that came through a system of white supremacy.
Absolutely, absolutely. Right. We didn't even learn. I mean, slavery was maybe just a little 10-minute blurb or something. And, there wasn't anything taught about the way we were taught scarcity, the indigenous people. It was very little taught. So,
Well,
any-
and not just in the schools, we're seeing right now with public broadcasting being defunded and how there's this replacement for it. I forget the name of it, where they talk about slavery like it was no big deal, um, and how it was better than other things. It was so weird if you actually listen to it. And they're trying to kind of envelop us with all of it. They're trying to capture the media, capture the schools, like every way that you have a way, PragerU, exactly, the right wing PBS style organization. And that's why we have to talk to each other and break these sound bites that they keep trying to brainwash people with because it's not real. And it just takes a little bit of critical thinking for people to understand that it's not real. Um, and when you said that standing with Black people is going to cost you, I can already come up with a few examples of my own of ways in which it's cost me, but I'm
That's why
thankful.
that's why I called on you today, Ana Rosa.
Well, when COVID was happening, the Santa Barbara County set up a task force to address it, but they were only really talking about how it was affecting Latinos and migrant communities. They were not talking about how it was affecting the Black community and how to outreach the Black community about it. So, Simone and I kind of were like, hey, y'all, this is like a big blind spot. And then also talking about how the Lompoc federal prison, how COVID was being dealt with there and how it was being mismanaged. And yeah, it was, let's just say after I stood up in those meetings, I have not been invited to any more of those task force meetings. And it's like, okay, fine. At least I said what needed to be said. But I see hands, so I'm going to call them the hands. Caroline and then Julia and Clint.
I guess I'm just sort of referencing maybe the last point. Um, you said, does this truly look like the revolution? I was kind of thinking that for a lot of people, like I would say I was sort of a centrist person, but I think like Gaza finally was a thing that made me realize like all these institutes I've trusted so much. Like I was a nightly news person. I love the nightly news. And just realizing like, it's such an obvious point. I'm not saying anything revelatory, but realizing like with a straight face they will lie to you and tell you that you're not seeing what you're seeing. I mean, it's been kind of painful. Like I've had to sort of let go of a lot of things that I really had a lot of faith in and a lot of belief in, and I haven't yet found the sort of the entities to replace that, or maybe there just are no entities to replace those things that you believed in so much. Like you just have to find it within yourself. But I mean, I think a lot of people are having that revelation now, if that's any comfort. But
That's
uh,
good you said that. With all the protest and everything going on, I was wondering if you see an awakening where there's more coming together, where there's an experience of, oh, we see what Black people may have gone through.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, for sure.
Franklin and then Leslie, Jade.
I want to thank you so much for this. This is that mentality, divide and conquer, and that's what empire does. And it does it within our own ranks. You'd be surprised to know that the whites have it amongst ourselves too. You know what? You got the rednecks all the way up into the aristocrats, and it's the same thing. The aristocrats can convince the rednecks that they're part of the bunch and they laugh as they make them do their little tricks. You know, I have that different glass is not just half full, but I'm so grateful to have a glass perspective. I haven't lost anything because of my standing up for social justice. I've gained respect for myself. I can look myself in the mirror and I can look the world in the eyes and know that I'm doing life right. That I'm not living by the standards that you've told me to live by. You know what? My dad was such a good inspiration for me as a child because when I would come home really proud to tell him about some history I learned, he'd correct me and go, "That's what they're teaching you, but I'm going to let you know something. You're going to learn as you get older and as you continue to grow in your education that what you've been taught isn't always correct. It's just what they're telling you. And that what they want you to learn." He goes, "I learned that when I went to college. And suddenly the lessons I learned in high school were not truth, even a little bit. I started learning real history." And so my dad explained that to me early because I didn't trust adults anyway. Like I really didn't. Like you can't convince me of what you're telling me is real. You know what I mean? Slavery wasn't that bad. Are you kidding me? People were dehumanized. That's horrible. And then they're gaslit to talk about, well, get over it. That was 200 years ago. No, the systems are all still have been skewed. The Nazis learned how to do what they did from us and our Jim Crow laws and our segregation. The Nazis looked up to us.
Mhm.
That's how history really is. But they don't put that out there. So that's just my 2 cents.
Jade?
Yeah, talking about, miseducation and whatnot. And, I come, most of I come from a large family. I'm the baby of 7, and my siblings are quite a bit older. And they grew up in Jim Crow, Oklahoma. And my family moved out west, and I was born here. Thank you. I was born out here. But so even our perspectives, growing up and how we saw the world was just so different. And the women in my family there, I have 2 sisters. We were considered literally the black sheep of the family because we intermarried. My sisters had Mexican husbands, and so my nieces and nephews are Mexican. I have cousins that are Mexican. And then, of course, I married a black man and I have black children. And so we were sort of considered like the rebels. And I'm thinking the women are onto something here. The women have just, you know what I mean? Like we understand that love is love and that we're inclusive and so, looking at it from my perspective with a blended family is just a very, I had to relearn a bunch of stuff, by the time I got into junior high and high school, I'd had some really great teachers that sort of opened my eyes even more. I had always been a person who stood up for what I thought people were, being marginalized. But when I married my husband, he's from Memphis and grew up in that perspective. And so my children really got to understand me growing up here in Southern California and their father being subjected to busing and segregation and all the things that he had to go to in Memphis, Tennessee. And for those of you that know that area, so it was really good for them to understand that their heritage also came from sharecropping and from my poor Southern family moving out west. And so it was actually my children actually got a better education just because of who their parents were. not because of what they were learning in school. So I just wanted to say that, and just say that, I'm down, all power to the people. You know what I'm saying?
Jade, what you're saying makes me think of how much a white person, and as you were saying in your case, it was a woman for sure, when they marry a man of color, it's not far removed from the cis hetero patriarchalism. Okay. I mean, it's like when people who are queer get rejected by their families because they don't fit in the system.
Jade, you remind me of any Black family reunion picture I've seen. I mean, everybody's it.
I show up. I'm always there. That's my family too. You know what I mean? I'm always there. Yeah.
Kenichi?
Oops, what happened to
Question,
Kenichi?
David. I just need a clarification. I think I believe I heard you say that white feminism is superfluous. In other words, what I understood was there's Black feminism. And if we really embrace the message embodiment of Black feminism, it is inclusive of everything. Is that what you meant?
White feminism separates white women from everybody else,
Yes, that is true.
from other women.
That is true. And so if we embrace Black feminism, then it's an all-inclusive with intersectionality, correct?
That would be the case.
All right. And then is it correct to say, because I read this one kind of academic book. I forget who the author is. It's called Arise, Awake and Shine or something. It's about Black feminism and how they were really the glue that really stuck the civil rights and other liberation movement among the Blacks, African Americans in particular, by creating clubs, by really extending beyond, I mean, across classicism and across income levels and so forth. Is my understanding correct that they were really, really an essential part of bringing all of the African Americans in various spaces together in order to unify, basically, and bring effectiveness to the liberation movement?
Yeah, I'm not sure what you're asking
No, I'm
about
just saying that I read this book, and then my understanding is that it was really, I mean, we saw, Black liberation movement right here in the United States through Malcolm X, through Reverend, what is it, the Martin Luther King Jr. and so forth. The men were leading these movements,
Yeah.
but the glue that really kept the movements and the attempt to unify the African Americans were the Black women.
So critical. The author Alice Walker coined the term womanism.
Yes.
Womanism not only uplifts Black women but all genders, and it's focused on the underclass. So everybody needs to identify with the underclass. And this is not a tangent, but bear with me. I was naive, hesitantly naive, when Barack Obama was elected president. I just thought, oh, there's going to be hope and change. I thought, because I mean, we'd never seen anything like this, not realizing the extent to which he had inherited the mantle of a white supremacist empire. And I hesitated when he renounced his pastor, Reverend Jeremiah Wright, because Jeremiah Wright is he knows what to say. He's got the message for the hour. I mean, so when Obama rejected the liberationist message of Jeremiah Wright, it was evidence that he was selling out. And I feel not disappointed in Obama so much as I feel disappointed in me for taking the bait. Um, I should have been more prophetic. Anyway, that's what it means to Alina. Thank you for you put in chat. I'm sitting with what it means that we don't have to save a system that wasn't built for us. I think that for me, that is it. That is where I have to sit because I've been disappointed way too many times. I've been baited with the psyops and everything so many times that I just can't go with it anymore.
And we learn from that experience, right? The bitter experience. We learn
Yeah.
from it and we move forward. But would you say, my last question is, would you say that there are folks, despite the disappointment after disappointment, they will continue to pursue the empire,
Oh,
regardless, right?
yeah, including black people. I mean, that's what's happening right now. I mean, you can hardly find a black person, the Congressional Black Caucus or yeah, a black person in office. By the time they get to a lofty position, they're just not reliable anymore. I mean, uh, you know, obviously they have positions that may be better than conservatives. I mean, the ones who are about Republicans, but we need something new. I mean, it wears on my soul to feel like I have to support the Democrats. I mean, it just wears on my conscience to feel like I have to sell out. Uh, Julius's hand is up. I don't see you, Julius, but I know you're in here somewhere.
Thank you. That was a wonderful message, Dr. Moore. And I've just been taking in all the comments from the other participants. And Anna Rosa, thank you so much for your participation, your contribution, your efforts beyond this formation. This is you are an example of what solidarity looks like between Black and Brown. And like Dr. Moore said, there's a price to pay for standing with the least of these in our social structure. And as Dr. Moore was speaking on this topic of division amongst them between blacks and Black Americans and blacks within the diaspora, my mind was going to Walter Rodney and his book, amongst his other books, but one book that stood out as you were speaking, Dr. Moore, is The Groundings with My Brothers. And there was a quote, I think it's chapter 6. I'm just looking at it. It's like a PDF on my computer. And for those, Walter Rodney was a Guyanese Black man, and he was a scholar, activist, politician. But during his career, he wound up in Jamaica, and he was active in reaching out to the underclass, if you will, of Black people in Jamaica and trying to raise their consciousness. While he was an academician on the University of the West Indies, I think that's like one of the main universities in Jamaica. And let's just say that the political power structure, did not like that. But the political power structure was dominated by other Black people who looked just like Brother Walter Rodney. So he starts chapter 6 of his book. Long and short of it is they pushed him out of the country. He was too radical, even for the Black political structure in Jamaica, which goes to Dr. Moore's point a moment ago that as Black people rise in the social structure, their radicalness kind of withers away, such that when they encounter a real revolutionary, a real radical, it's almost like worse. So Walt, he says this, quote, "The government of Jamaica, which is Garvey's homeland, has seen fit to ban me, a Guyanese, a black man, and an African. But this is not very surprising, because though the composition of that government, of its prime minister, the head of state, and several leading personalities, though that composition happens to be predominantly black, as the brothers at home say, they are all white-hearted," end quote. So that is part of the struggle. Uh, that is part of the struggle that the system has put in place certain people that look like us, but they may not be in sync in terms of achieving liberation. And then another scholar I've started to kind of um, get interested in is a scholar named Barbara Fields, and she wrote a very powerful article in the early '90s. Um, but I want to read some quotes from some of her articles. The article is titled "Slavery, Race, and Ideology in the United States of America." So some may know that article, others may not, but it's a very, I guess, in this field, people know about her and her work. And she wrote a book, I want to say it was in 2014, called Racecraft. I haven't read it, but I've watched her interviews and her discussions of it. But it kind of follows the same themes as I'm going to get into here. And she pushed me in terms of my understanding of race and racism. And I just wanted to share with you folks. So she pushed me because she says she touches upon a very important assumption that is endemic within the American version of racism or race relations. She says one of the most important assumptions accepted implicitly by most Americans is that there is really only one race, the Negro race. Okay, and she talks about the one drop rule, meaning that in our American social structure, if you have one drop of African blood, you're considered black, which ties into what was said earlier that there's a radicalness. If you're Latina, you married a black man, whoa, because now you've introduced something that you can't make that go away. And she also says Americans regard people of known African descent or visible African appearance as a race, but not people of known European descent or visible European appearance. That is why in the United States, there are scholars and black scholars, and she's emphasizing black, women and black women. So when we talk about white feminism, right, the social structure just calls it feminism. But Dr. Moore is pointing out when they say feminism, they mean white women, hey, Francisco, right? And I'm going to continue. Saul Bellow and John Updike are writers. Ralph Ellison and Toni Morrison are black
Black
writers.
writers.
Yep. George Bush and Michael Dukakis were candidates for president. Jesse Jackson was a black candidate for president. So, end quote. The bottom line is even the concept of race itself is only means anything if you really think about it. If it only applies to African people of African descent. Other folks, especially Europeans, they're not a race. They're just human beings. It's people of African descent that are different, so you need to categorize them accordingly. And she calls this a racial ideology. And she says it had to be developed for a very specific reason. quote, racial ideology supplied the means of explaining slavery to people whose terrain was a republic founded on a radical doctrines of liberty and natural rights. And more importantly, a republic in which those doctrines seemed to represent accurately the world in which all but a minority lived. Only when the denial of liberty became an anomaly apparent even to the least observant and reflective members of Euro American society did ideology systematically explain the anomaly. Slavery got along for 100 years after its establishment without race as its ideological rationale. The reason is simple. Race explained why some people could rightly be denied what others took for granted, namely liberty, supposedly a self-evident gift of nature's God. But there was nothing to explain until most people could, in fact, take liberty for granted, as the indentured servants and disfranchised freedmen of colonial America could not. So what she's getting at is before 1619 and what we know as enslaved Africans in the Americas, there were white indentured servants, and they were treated as chattel early on. They were actually traded in poker games. But as they got their rights and they couldn't be oppressed like the Africans could, because back in the homeland in England, they actually had rights. You had to be able to explain why is it that seemingly everybody has rights, but these Africans do not, right? So to explain that, you create a whole rationale. Well, these Africans are a whole nother race. They're completely different. They're lazy. They smell bad. They can't think. They're not smart. You have to justify it because it makes no sense. And the only true race, according to Dr. Fields, based on the American system, is people of African descent. And if you really dig deep, look at all the census tracts when you check the boxes, right? People can be French and Scottish and Welsh, and you can be Mexican, you can be Peruvian, you can, right? You can have all these ancestries. But once you start talking about African and having African descent, oh, you're black or you're African American, right? And we've talked about the identity politics of whiteness, right? You start out in Europe, you're German, you're Irish, you're Scot, you're Welsh, you're Belgian, you're Bulgarian, but you cross that Atlantic, you're white, but you still get to identify with your ethnic roots, right? You still get to say, well, I'm German, I'm Scottish, right? So those two scholars came to mind as you were talking, Dr. Moore. I just wanted to share that thought with folks that not only is whiteness a social construct, race is a social construct, but that's just the beginning. Race is synonymous with Africanness. That's the only true race. And that's a very deep and profound point that pushed me beyond just I thought I was good. I was like, oh, whiteness is a social construct, race is a social construct, but Dr. Field says, no, that's just the beginning. That's just the initial premise from which we just push farther to really analyze what we're really dealing with here. So thank you.
All right, Julius. I want to just in short respond to Robina's question. What happens when Black folks don't get along? And my title was When Black Folks Don't Get Along. I just want to say that I want to reemphasize what I was saying about speaking truth, embodying truth, because liberation is coming through truth, bearing witness to the truth. And, just one small example is I wrote this Substack this past week. What happened when I spoke truth regarding queer folks to my denomination and instantly became an outsider in the way that Ana Rosa became an outsider to that community that she was talking about. And it's an abiding situation. Um, you have to be ready to be an outsider. And I will say, unless you have become an outsider, you probably have not become a full-fledged member of the beloved community. Um, yeah, it's when you become an outcast that you become part of the community of the outcasts. And that's I can't remember who said it. Oh, it was Clinton that pointed out you know your conscience is clear, your self-respect is elevated. So yeah, Kenichi says Jesus suffered outside the gate. Well, we haven't addressed this exhaustively today, but it's about time for us to have communion. Unless somebody has something really pressing. Uh, Ana Rosa and Shella, yeah, thank you for leading our exchange, and we we're
Thank you.
okay. One more. We have Rosie. All right.
Okay. Hi guys, and gals and everyone. Um, um, I want to just go back to what Brother Julius was sharing. That's very, very profound and accurate when you think about it. Um, and what needs to be stated is that everything that you shared, bro, um, has to do with the topic in and of itself, Pastor, that what happens when folks don't get along. And I am opining that in variations and degrees, you know, our my black brothers and sisters fall in between all of what Julia shared, because it's prevalent not just with my black brothers and sisters, but even in the Latino community and the Mexican community, and I would venture to say in others as well, you know, and more so people of color. And so that struggle is real. And I'll say what a cousin of mine said to another cousin that's very fair skinned and can pass. Okay. She told her, you can say all that you want to say because of how you look, because you can pass. But look at me. I can't change the color of my skin. And because I can't change the color of my skin, I'm always being looked down upon. So we get that shit in every, I
Yeah.
think, in
Yeah. You brought up a
so thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Brother Julius, for sharing what you did, because you know what? My dad used to say all people come from black folk, Asian folk, and indigenous people. Somos una mezcla, is what my father used to say. We're all intertwined.
yeah,
Glory
Rosie,
to
just
God. Mm-hmm.
thank you for bringing up that notion of passing, because it's very true. A lot of people in our community who feel like they can pass try to, and they're so scared of being thrown out of the groups where they're welcome to have some kind of power or proximity to whiteness. And so they'll enforce immigration laws against other people of color. They'll be in ICE, they'll do the raids because they're so, like, it's all rooted in fear of losing any bit of power and proximity to whiteness that they have. And that's
Thank
why
you.
right now, when they're saying, oh, we need to be united, yeah, that would be lovely. And I think that Jesus Christ calls us to oneness, But right now we're seeing the vultures come out. We're seeing the people who, you know, they just want to profit where they see an opportunity to profit, um, because they think that that's the way to win because we're in capitalism. So that is for them the ticket out of being like the rest of us who are, people of color might not be able to pass as white folks.
Well, thank you, Ana Rosa. Thank you, Shella, and thank you, everybody. As we have communion, let me just, respond also. My dear sister Brenda pointed out how she was a beneficiary of Obamacare, as are Diane and myself. And, it's interesting how white supremacist empire can do things to, assist in the survival of people to some extent. And there's a long history of that. I mean, FDR, the New Deal, it was really the new white deal, but eventually black folks were able to benefit. We may lionize Abraham Lincoln but just think within a week of him signing the Emancipation Proclamation, he oversaw the biggest mass execution in the history of the country of indigenous people, and that's not the only harm that he brought to indigenous nations. And you look at the good that Obama did, but you also have to. I'm sure Julius, if we let him back in, he could talk extensively about the harm that Obama's bringing destruction to Libya and Muammar Gaddafi brought to the entire African continent. Because Gaddafi was a voice of unifying Africa. Maybe not the same as Kwame Nkrumah, but whenever people speak up to bring Africa together, they become a liability as far as the West is concerned. And Obama played into that. And, I never got excited about Kamala Harris because she too would be the heir of a white supremacist empire. Some of you may remember when she toured Africa, toured the continent. She was working for the man. I mean, she was the concern of the U.S. economy was that China had too many inroads. Well, it's not like the U.S. has been better to Africa than China. And I'm not saying we should trust China. I'm just saying that that the U.S. has a history of doing more harm, when it comes to CIA assassinations of significant leaders. Okay, so let's have communion. Yeah, let's have communion. Because, if for it to really be communion, we have to be in community. We have to be of one heart and one mind. And Jesus will bless whenever we are in true communion. So, that's why historically churches have asked everybody to search your heart. Not that you're unworthy, but don't miss the moment. Search your heart. And I would say specifically search your heart today. May we search our hearts for any traces of anti-blackness, anti-blackness in our families that we have indulged or tolerated or been silent about, anti-blackness in our communities and our workplaces, because the revolution requires truth-telling. So, and that's the only way we're going to have true oneness, true community, true unity, is we will know the truth and the truth makes us free. So this is the body and the blood of our Redeemer, Jesus Christ. Would you eat and drink?